So one evening we talked about, the conversation had come up about the number of approaches each of us were getting from women, many in remote parts of Ireland whose businesses or professional situation was in turmoil due to COVID-19. So we just thought, well, what can we do?
That was Derry girl and business consultant Clare McGee. And I'm Martin Nutty.
And I'm John Lee. This is Irish Stew, conversation for the global Irish nation.
This episode of Irish Stew is sponsored by the Irish Heritage Tree Program. Celebrate your Irish roots by planting native trees for family and friends in the beautiful Golden Vale of Ireland. Go to irishheritagetree.com and use the exclusive discount code today. It's IrishStew10 for 10% off. That code again is Irish Stew and the numeral 10. Keep the heritage of Ireland green and growing by going to irishheritagetree.com.
Hey, welcome back to Irish Stew, and I'm John Lee, and I'm very happy to hear where we are going next in global Ireland. And we've been remiss by not going there before. So with Martin as our tour guide, let's head to Northern Ireland.
Hey, John, great to be back on the podcast again. I'm delighted that we have Clare McGee joining us. She is a proud Derry girl. Clare has 20 years of experience in the management consulting business. She's a co-founder and director of Innovate Northern Ireland, or Innovate NI. She's involved in the Eden Project for Foyle River Gardens, and she's a co-founder of Awaken Hub. Now, that's where Clare originally came to my attention, because Awaken Hub is a fairly new venture. It was established, I believe, in July 2020. And specifically, that grouping, as I understand it, is aimed at Irish women who are interested in being founders or maybe are already established in their businesses, but, need a networking group, a support group, so that they can grow their business. So Clare, welcome to the podcast, and maybe you can fill us in on Awaken Hub a little more. I'm not sure if I've actually mangled the description of the organization, but if you could tell us a little bit about how that came to be, because it's a relatively new venture.
Yeah, thanks, Martin, for having me and John today. So I suppose Awaken Hub, it's our mission is to democratise the founder landscape for women as the only all Ireland of Ireland women founders community. And we want to do that by bridging the gap of existing supports in the startup ecosystem and to help generate startup, scale-up and investor readiness opportunities for women-led businesses in every corner of Ireland and also the Irish diaspora. So how that started really was in lockdown last year when it hit, to keep ourselves sane. Myself and three friends, Mary McKenna, Sinead Crowley and Mary Carty, we used to have regular Zoom meetings every week, just kind of by the by, kind of to chew the fat, and as I said, keep each other sane. So one evening we talked about, the conversation had come up about the number of approaches each of us were getting from women, many in remote parts of Ireland whose businesses or professional situation was in turmoil due to COVID-19. So we just thought, well, what can we do? So we revisited conversations we'd had at Inspire Fest a few years before on the potential of galvanising a female founder community across the island of Ireland. And we decided to host an online event and just see what happens.
Just for clarity purposes, Clare, can you tell us a little bit about Inspire Fest?
Inspire Fest is a gathering that happens every year. It's now called Future Human, and it's led by Anne O'Dea and the team at Silicon Republic, I think. So it brings speakers from across the world together for 3 days, as the name would suggest, to inspire, motivate, and to network. So we decided we usually have a gathering of our friends. So every year we would go there, spend time together, but also enjoy the inspiring, motivational talks from different founders, different businesses, organisations from across the globe. And that happens in Dublin every year. So, just following on from that, then we decided that we would host our own event. Was our first Awaken Hub event, which was oversubscribed, which we were surprised at, and we use Zoom meeting, and it only can facilitate 100 attendees. And obviously we were doing this bootstrapping and, on a pro bono basis. So we could only facilitate 100 people on the call. And we already, a week out from the event, we had 100 people registered. We had a waiting list of over 45 females, and they were from across the globe. So we had Irish females from all corners of Ireland, but also Barcelona, New York, different parts of the States, Australia, the UK, looking to basically just come to the event and see what happens. So really, Awaken Hub just blew up from there. So without a strategy or a plan, the power of digital has enabled us, and has been catalytic, for the growth of Awaken Hub over the last 20 months.
Claire, I'm familiar with the effort largely through my association with the Irish Business Organization, and I know we promote and amplify what you're doing on social media a lot, Twitter in particular. I was interested to hear the kind of the silver lining of the pandemic, the things that people did to, make the most of the situation and really create something completely new. It's really impressive. We'll get back into this part of your life, but let's go back a ways and talk about you growing up in Derry. Of course, a lot of Americans have a new view of Derry that they probably hadn't had before through the very popular show here as well, Derry Girls. What was your life as a Derry girl like?
Actually, very, very similar to the show Derry Girls. The show itself it's based on the school that I went to, Thornhill College, and the creator of that, Lisa McGee, who is not a relative. The writer of that, she was the year below me at Thornhill, so it was very much my era, my age, and the experiences, of getting the bus to school and the army checkpoints and the crack. I mean, Derry Girls really does sum up what it was like to grow up in Derry in the early 90s.
How did the various communities accept the Derry Girls within your area? The various divides. Was Derry Girls at all a bridge builder?
I think that possibly, everyone can kind of interact with Derry Girls. They all see themselves, at different parts. Especially there's one scene in the Derry Girls where they're coming together, and it's about differences, and putting up the differences, and the silly differences as growing up that you would have had again, Protestants, put their toaster in the cupboard, and Catholics keep theirs out on the bench, silly things like that. But in terms of bridging the gap, I think people in Derry don't really take themselves too seriously. And growing up in the 90s, although we were a divided community, it didn't really feel like that when you were a teenager, because you didn't really get into the politics. You didn't understand it.
This is obviously a comedy, a TV show. It's clearly got an edge to it because it plays against the backdrop of the troubles in Northern Ireland. But I'm kind of curious, in terms of somebody that's operating within the business sphere of Northern Ireland, specifically in Derry, has Derry Girls actually had a positive impact on the city in terms of visibility?
I think definitely it has had a major impact on the city in terms of visibility. Every time you see tourists or even business leaders coming to the city, they're now getting their photograph taken in the backdrop of the Derry Girls. So it really kind of put a spotlight on Derry, which is usually seen, the northwest region of Ireland is always seen as the forgotten part of Ireland. Everything happens in the hubs of Dublin and Belfast, and the Derry's kind of like the forgotten village, and we get less investment, we get less FDI. We are, significantly with significantly low employment here. So yes, it definitely has shone a spotlight on the city, and it has, I think it has been catalytic in terms of people kind of viewing the city differently and thinking about it as a place to come, a place to visit, a place maybe to start up in business.
Claire, you mentioned, the troubles have come up, and, I'm the American in the group, so I have the American perspective here. And, we always think of, the Good Friday, of course, it's Belfast. Belfast is what people kind of focus on. How has the change in Northern Ireland, the post Good Friday Accord, how has your city changed?
Our city has changed immensely. Even the city, in terms of how it looks and feels, the city's very inviting. The city was always inviting, but it's a lot nicer now to look at. There's been so much investment. We have our iconic Peace Bridge, which opened in 2012, which has really seen a big transformation for the city. But we still have lots to do. There's lots of opportunities that we still need to capitalise upon.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain the significance of the Peace Bridge? I'm not familiar with that. I've never actually been to Derry. I will, plead that deficiency sometime in the future, hopefully.
Well, you're very welcome in Derry anytime, Martin, and you also, John. The Peace Bridge it's situated in the city centre. It's a walking bridge between the city centre and the waterside. And predominantly, in the past, you would have thought the city side was predominantly Catholic and the water side would be known as predominantly Protestant. It was kind of, the river divided the city. And the Peace Bridge really has brought the city together, where growing up in the city side, you would really have no reason to go to the water side much. And the Peace Bridge just really drove people to go over to the shared spaces, the community hubs over there. And back and forth to the city centre. So yeah, it has really changed.
Hey Claire, if I have seen this correctly, that bridge is a kind of a curving affair. It's not straight across the river.
It's not. It curves. It meanders kind of across the river, and it has like two large prongs that come out as like two hands reaching across the divide.
Beautiful. Well, we're fascinated by Derry and the evolution and the changes there, but we want to get a little bit more about you and your evolution. How did you get onto the path of life that you're on now?
I suppose it wasn't really planned. It was more of a falling into that path of life. When I was at school, I studied kind of sociology and was really interested in sociology and social policy. But whenever I was in upper sixth at school, then we had the opportunity to participate on a program which was called Young Enterprise. And Young Enterprise is still going now. It's a charity that runs across the UK. And we had the opportunity to set up and run our own business during the academic year in school. And from that, I just saw a really different perspective of how you could make a job for yourself, basically, and be your own boss. And from then, I was really always interested in business, so changed my degree prospects and changed from doing nursing and to doing business and finance. And from then, just really, it's been organic in terms of there was no real step plan. When I finished university, I got a job in the Northern Ireland Business and Innovation Centre, which was an innovation centre, and there's 160 of them across the whole of Europe. And from that, it was a great eye-opener as to the opportunities of collaboration, businesses working together, different countries and different territories working together, having the same issues in business, and also about how that, through that collaboration that you could grow businesses locally, but also then that they could then, develop internationally. So that was kind of the start of the journey, was, working with small startups in the local economy here, and helping them to develop collaborations with European businesses.
So can I ask, Claire, like within your family, is there a tradition of entrepreneurialism? Because that's what it seems like the Northern Ireland Business Innovation Centre was trying to stimulate, if I'm understanding this correctly.
Yeah, not at all in my family. I mean, my dad, he worked in DuPont, which is an American foreign direct investment business that came to Derry in the 70s. So he worked there as a chemical operator, and my mum worked in the local school in the canteen. And the joke used to be, I was the youngest of 5 children, but I was always the feisty one. And my uncle, there was a time in our house, and I'd been studying business and doing the young enterprise, and had to be selling them shares and stuff. And he, was as in Derry, what they do is they basically take the hand out of you, and that's kind of badgering you by saying, oh, well, how much money am I going to make back in this? And then the whole joke then was he had said about, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I said, oh, well, I want to have my own business, and I'm going to break that glass ceiling. And to this day, he'll always say, you remember whenever you were 16, 17 and saying, that you wanted to make a difference, you wanted to do that. So no, there isn't an entrepreneurial background in the family, but I think I have kind of stimulated that with the upcoming generation in the family. So now I'm always saying to people, why are you thinking about a job? Could you not be thinking about what it is that you could set up and do yourself, so that you're always working for yourself? So I think it gives you a great liberation being your own boss.
Claire, how, speaking of entrepreneurship, are there any, either advantages or challenges that you see in Ireland with Irish people? Is there something to overcome to embrace an entrepreneurial lifestyle, or, is there anything in the Irish character, whatever that might be, that lends itself to this?
I think Irish people aren't afraid to take a risk. But the other thing is that they do have a sense of fear of failure. And that then can be really beaten out of you because you're told not to take yourself too serious as well. So there's kind of, it's a strange one, in that, there is the opportunity here, but sometimes you feel that people are held back because they're afraid of what others will think about them. And that's a big issue, I think, especially in Ireland, is the confidence piece.
Yeah, I think, my experience growing up in Dublin, let's say I was at I wasn't around for the emerging Celtic Tiger. And the emphasis on the very tail end, just when I was a young man before I came to college in America, was to get yourself a safe job somewhere, like a job. Like, I come from a long line of postmen. And that was, in many respects, an ideal job. My father turns out to have been, he had a safe job in horticultural research, but he also set up a business on the side, which ultimately became the family business. So that was kind of, a transition within my own family. But I do agree that there's a certain deep suspicion in Ireland about business. And I think it's actually, to some degree, a legacy of the colonial experience. In other words, the people that had the money were the former occupiers, the British, whereas the people that didn't have the money were the Irish, and consequently, since they were the occupiers, it was up to the Irish to sabotage. Now that's pretty frickin'. That's a little bit over the top. And I'm not saying that to disparage the British. I'm actually half English myself. Oops, I shouldn't let that out. But there is, I do think, a wariness over business, over being the boss. And it's like, who the hell do you think you are, being in charge of everything and, being the big shot. So that was the Dublin experience. And I think what you're saying to me is that's kind of, to some degree, what's going on in Derry as well, at least in your experience.
Yeah, I think in Derry there's really an unspoken distrust of anyone trying to attract too much attention to themselves. And seeing as, even in PR, it's like, oh, who does she think she is, or who do they think they are? You're getting a cut above yourself. So sometimes that can maybe hold people back. You'll find a lot of businesses and there's a lot of great work goes on in Derry, and you don't really hear about it because people don't really like to tell their story or don't like to brag.
Yeah, I think there's certainly awareness of self-promotion, and it's so incredibly different from America. In America, people are encouraged to talk about their success. People like the success story. And so this is, I do think, is an oddity of Ireland. And I'm kind of curious, like in your advisor capacity, how do you encourage people to overcome, let's call it a shyness, because of that cultural difference?
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons behind Awaken Hub, and the predecessor of that, myself and Mary McKenna, we used to run a thing called 300 Seconds Ireland, and that was to support females around speaking at conferences, because usually what happens, and we would have seen it ourselves, if someone had asked you to speak at a conference or asked you to do a podcast, like I would never usually have agreed to a challenge like this, you would have said, oh, I know someone who could do that, but you wouldn't necessarily put yourself forward to do it. So what we thought, well, there's must be lots of women out there just like us. So we kind of ran a few sessions across the country, like in Galway, in Derry and Belfast, and we asked females to put themselves forward for 300 seconds, which is just 5 minutes, and they could talk about anything. It could have been their business, it could be their personal experience, it could be a charity that they're interested in, but just to get over that fear of speaking for 5 minutes to an audience without notes. And you could prepare your talk or whatever, but it was just that getting up in front of an audience. And the good thing about the audience was it was a nice audience. It was friends. It was other females who were in the same boat. So really, the confidence thing as part of Awaken Hub is what we are really, really trying to tackle. And that's what we do in our monthly events. So our monthly events happen, and our panelists most of our panelists are from our community, and they would have started at the first event, just being listeners and watching in and not really participating. But by the time they come to the third event, then they're turning on their mic and they're asking a question. Mm-hmm. And then if we go out and ask to come in and speak, then they'll go, I don't really want to, but I see other people doing it, so yes, okay. So it's really, that's one of the big things that we're trying to overcome as part of Awaken Hub.
I'm going to get right back to that, but I just want to mention that by this time, my partner here, Martin Nutty, usually figures out that he's cousins with our guest. He plays that game of Irish people knowing each other, 2 degrees of separation. I just want to mention a couple of connections I've had with your group, Claire. Mary Carty, somebody I feel like I know, but we've really just kind of pinged off each other in social media. Mary McKenna was probably the last new person I met before the pandemic. I saw her at a St. Patrick's Day, preview event the day COVID was declared a pandemic, and she was on her way to the airport. And then the two of us served on the same, spoke at the same conference just recently, New York, New Belfast. I was led a panel the night before, and you were on a panel the main day with my very good friend, Marianne Pierce.
Yeah, love Marianne. It was actually this time last week. I had just been on LinkedIn this morning saying I can't believe it's a week since we were on the panel. Yeah, and you really are just 2 days separation. I mean, we're very lucky. The Awaken Hub community and our friendship, Sinead Crowley, Mary Carty, Mary McKenna, we've actually opened up our network and our friends to each other. So Mary's friends are now my friends, and we really do have that kind of bond, which is great.
Claire, looking at your work, I know there's the sort of the job and then the passion. It sounds like what you're involved with just would generate a lot of inspiring stories. Are there anything you can share of a transformation, a turnaround, someone who you've been related to at Awaken Hub who's really taken to what you had to say?
We have 2 two females within the community who never knew each other before, who both had separate businesses, and they have actually they've become co-founders of a business just within the last 12 months as part of the Wake and Hub community. I mean, there's been lots of impact already, even, small things like the amount of our Awake and Hubbers now who we're seeing talking on panels at different events. We are also seeing a lot of them, really putting themselves out there, developing collaborations with other businesses where they're, buying services from each other and consultancy and stuff like that. So,
is there a way that Martin and I talk all about the global Irish nation? That's what we look to kind of explore different aspects of global Ireland. Is there a way that your Awaken Hub effort can really contribute to that and build new bridges?
Yeah, well, we see the Awaken Hub, our vision for Awaken Hub is to develop it as a model of best practice that can be replicated globally. And parallel to this as well, we have a vision to democratize the female investment ecosystem and launch an Angels Investment Fund. And that would be an accessible, affordable and woman-led investor community across the island of Ireland and beyond, enabling access to investment funding for women from women angel founders, so impact investors, and that would be diaspora as well. So we would see the Awaken Hub community as being not just, it's on the island of Ireland, but females and diaspora from the island of Ireland as well. We really want to, build a community where the likes of, even our Awaken Hubbers have access to the likes of, Marianne Pierce and her great expertise, and Kelly Hoy in terms of networking and stuff like that. There's just so many opportunities whenever you open it up to a bigger audience. So that would be, that's one of the key things that we're looking to do over the next 12 to 18 months.
Yeah, it's interesting to me that you basically related when you kicked this off that it was with a focus for all Ireland, but then it kind of almost instantly became international by virtue, I guess, of the fact that this is, these meetings are being conducted digitally. I'm curious, are the participants, the offshore participants, are they all Irish, or do you find people from other communities also coming in?
Well, they are Irish. They see themselves as Irish diaspora, so they do, one or separations away from being, from having been born here, having aunts, grandparents here. But we don't limit it to that. I mean, anyone who feels like Ireland could be home, really, that's who Awaken Hub is for. Any female who feels that they would like to come and set up their business in Ireland or have connections with Irish businesses. And we do say it's a female-founded community, but we do have some men in there too who attend our events and are involved in the networking aspect. So we don't say that we're not accepting of men, but it's at the foremost it's for women.
Yeah, men traditionally are not short of networking opportunities. But I'm just going to kind of dial things back a little bit time-wise. You mentioned earlier that you got involved, or your first job, I think, was, I'm not sure if this is correct, Norabic, Northern Ireland. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it. And you seem to have worked there for about 14 years. Can you tell us a little bit about that organization? I'm assuming it is a government-funded organization, and some of the experiences that were beneficial to you from those years.
You're right. It was Norabic. It was the Northern Ireland Business and Innovation Centre. It actually wasn't government funded, although it was set up Norabic was brought to Ireland and to Derry specifically by John Hume and another principal of the local FE college, Peter Gallagher. So they, at the time, 1985-86, whenever they saw the real opportunity of how being a part of Europe would be very, very beneficial to the citizens of the Northwest and Northern Ireland. So it was a not-for-profit organisation, so it was a social enterprise as such. It did get government funding to deliver services on behalf of the then LEGI organisation, which is now Invest Northern Ireland. But it did leverage a substantial amount of European funding through the peace funds, Interreg funds, and the Horizon 2020, things like that. So what it delivered a lot of pilot business support programs and innovation programs that then the outcomes of those pilots then would influence policy and then be embedded into the programs that the local government, the local councils and Invest Northern Ireland would run then on a Northern Ireland basis. And it was very much a cross-border collaboration because there was 5 business innovation centres across the island of Ireland. So there was Norabic, Westbic, which covered the western region, which is still there, Dublin Bic, Cork Bic, Waterford. So there was BICs then, 180 of those across the whole of Europe. There still is, the BIC network there, which is head up by the European Commission under the European Business Network remit.
And I believe in 2013, you had a big conference in Derry that was the BIC conference, so to speak. I saw you had Steve Wozniak, one of the Apple founders, there at that. And I think Tim Schmidt of the Eden Project also attended. Can you talk a little bit about that and what kind of impact it had on you and actually on the city of Derry as well?
Yeah, well, every year the Business Innovation Centre, the EBN network, would host an annual get-together of all the BICs across Europe. And for years, we used to travel to different parts of France and Spain. And in 2011, I had suggested to the management team at Norabic, it would be really good if we could host it in 2013 because that's the year that Derry will be the UK City of Culture, and it would be great to showcase Derry. There was lots of caveats around hosting a European Business Network Congress. You had to have so many hotels, the linkages to the airports, and you also needed a big budget as well to put it on. So the management team were like, don't know if we could do that. And, Derry's so far, we'd have to run it in Belfast. And I was very much adamant that there's no way, if I'm putting my heart and soul into this, that we're going to run a conference in Belfast. So after a lot of to-ing and fro-ing and putting in an application form of intent, because you had to apply and then you had to go and present, you had to make basically a business case to the business network in Europe around why they should bring the conference to your locality. So in 2012, we actually won that process, and we said we were going to make it a conference with a difference, and where we wanted to have really inspirational speakers and really where people could come and get a taste of Derry and a taste of Ireland, but also focusing on digital, cultural and social innovation because they're the key driving factors for the growth and will be for the growth of Derry. So we were successful in getting that, and in 2013 then we hosted the conference, and yes, our keynote speaker was Steve Wozniak. We also had Sir Richard Florida, the creative classes, and Sir Tim Smith, who stole the show. He was there to talk about social innovation, and he talked about the work that they had done at Eden in Cornwall and how it really transformed the local economy of Cornwall. So while he was in Derry for those 3 days, a local community activist had asked, could we bring him on site to an area called Boom Hall, which is a really historic site in the city. It's where the siege of Derry happened. And then we brought him on site, and he had said, yeah, this is a lovely site, but look at that amazing river, and this site, which is so close to the city centre and hasn't been utilised. If you could bring the partners and the collaboration together, Eden would be really, really interested in helping you guys to do something transformational here. So 2013, that was a real catalyst for another project, which is what I call a passion project, which is the Foyle River Gardens, now known as the Eden Project Foyle, which is a proposed exemplar ecotourism and heritage-led landscape regeneration attraction in the city. It's at the concept stage at the minute, but it's around reimagining the sites of Boomhall and Brookhall for the 21st century. And the site itself, it's an iconic site, and it straddles the Derry and Donegal border, at the pivotal point where the Causeway coastal route meets the Wild Atlantic Way. It's just stunning to see. So the EBN Congress had been a real catalyst for the development of this project, which is now still in the development stages.
We, I will leave the website in our show notes for people to take a look at. It looks very interesting. As you say, still in the kind of the planning stages. What needs to happen next to bring it closer to fruition?
Well, at the minute, the project is at a pivotal point. Basically, we need to secure the next part of funding in order to enable the detailed design and planning stage of it. So we have, the business model, the sustainability plan, all that is all in place, and that's been kind of looked over by many consultants, and all the economic impact has been done. It'll require a £67 million capital investment, but with that, it will have like a 62 million net annual return into the city. So for every £1 spent invested in the project, it'll have a £5.40 economic benefit return. So at the minute, we are in negotiations with the two governments, both sides of the border, in order to bring the project to the next stage. So we would really like to see shovel in the ground in the next 2 to 3 years with that.
Well, we look forward to coming over to see that. You're talking about, this sounds like, potentially a full-time job. You also have Innovate NI you're working on. You have Awaken Hub, and I know you're involved with some other what we would call nonprofit activities. How do you do it all?
Whenever you're doing stuff that you enjoy, it doesn't really feel like working. Awaken Hub and Eden Project Foyle and, the stuff that I do out in the community, you're basically out. It's like meeting with your friends and, you're chatting. You might have a bit of paperwork to do at the end of the day, but it is really enjoyable. So it doesn't really feel that you're working. Although sometimes you can get a bit tired from doing 10 to 12 hour days, but I really enjoy it, so it's fun. When it stops being fun, that's whenever I have to take a look at everything that you're involved in, and then decide what you push aside and what you concentrate on.
You're a fortunate person when your work becomes more play than work. And I think that's maybe one of the other cases one makes for a kind of the entrepreneurial lifestyle. But you yourself, obviously you've become an entrepreneur. In 2016, you set up this Innovate NI. Can you talk about leaving Norbik a little bit behind and then setting up Innovate NI? What was the motivation? What was playing in the background there?
Well, I suppose the motivation for leaving Norbik behind was that, whenever they talked about the dreaded word Brexit, Norbik was a European organisation, and a lot of the money came from European funds, and it was kind of like the writing was on the wall in terms of what Northern Ireland's position would be in European funding. So we obviously, because it was a social enterprise, it was led by a board of directors, and they had decided that, really we don't want to run a business, a social enterprise into the ground. We should really, liquidate, voluntary liquidation, and then give whatever surplus of cash then into another charitable organisation that's doing the same work. So that was what that the board had decided. And then I had just kind of thought, well, God, could I really go and work for someone else when you were so used to in Nordic? You made your job for yourself, so you were there. You had to go out and find fund, apply for different funds in order to support the businesses, but also to support your position. So I really enjoyed what I was doing, working with the businesses, and just thought, well, why would I go and work for someone else? Because sometimes that really can stifle your creativity and can, you kind of get into that mentality of, just working 9 to 5. So with my former, it would have been my boss in Nordic. My co-founder for Innovate NI is a guy called Barney Toll. So he and I, over a few discussions, decided, well, let's try it and see. And if nothing comes of it, everybody's employable. So when we left Nordic on the 31st of August 2016, and we set up Innovate NI on the 6th of September 2016, and we haven't looked back. Still able to decide what projects that you work on, do the stuff that you like, and we're still supporting Indigenous businesses across Northern Ireland. And it really gives you that flexibility to pick the projects that you want to work on and to work with the people that you want to work with. And it also gives me the flexibility to do all the other stuff that I enjoy doing, Awaken Hub and the other kind of charity work and social enterprise stuff. And Barney and I both are working on, the Eden Project Foy, because it was he and I who, at the time of the EBN Congress, it was he and I who kind of set the agenda for that and brought it to the city. So, it's a vehicle to allow us to do all the stuff that we like to do. And we enjoy it.
That's a kind of a topic Martin and I talk about once in a while, just being able to do what you enjoy to do. You talk about your work with Indigenous businesses across Ireland. We talked about your work with fostering women entrepreneurs. In this work, are you able, or do you see collaboration across communities that in other settings wouldn't happen? But within a business setting where ultimately there's a profit motive, do people come together across communities in a new way?
I think even in businesses, the people's mindsets are changing. Everyone does have that kind of CSR in the back of their head. The world's changing and business is changing as well, and how they adapt and how they interact with, with third sector organisations. So although, yes, they're out to make a profit, but everyone is, you will find lots and lots of goodwill out there of businesses that want to give back. For instance, we work on a project with the Community Foundation for Northern Ireland called the Techies in Residence programme. And what that does is for third sector organisations, so charities and social enterprises, if they identify a social challenge, it's the Techies in Residence work with them around digital transformation of that social challenge. So, developing a prototype for enablement. And the collaboration then, it's a third sector organisation, but the techies are coming from the private sector. So the private sector could be a freelance techie, or it could be like a large organisation, like Kainos have been involved in the past, or Allstate NI this year have provided some support through Techies in Residence, and the local business learning pool have provided support in the past as well. So I do think, it is changing. There are lots of opportunities for collaboration now, especially, with the big social challenges like climate change and, the whole mental health aspect. You will find big businesses really willing to collaborate with smaller businesses and also with social enterprises and charities in order to enable change.
Sitting in New York, obviously we're seeing a flow of news about tension currently in Northern Ireland over Brexit, about the border issue, if you will, the border now in the sea. To what degree is that impacting things, from your perspective at the moment?
I try not too much to worry or to think about stuff like that, but it does have an impact. You can see it even with products on shelves, access to delivery. Businesses are seeing, longer lead-in times to enable them to comply with orders for their customers. So it is having significant impact here. But again, that's something that I think that we leave to the politicians to sort out, because at the end of the day, we, even as a business community and the business sector, I mean, Northern Ireland voted against Brexit, and we're still in the situation. So it's kind of like, stop banging your head off a brick wall, let them get on with it, and we'll, as always, we'll just deal with the aftermath when it comes.
Yeah, it strikes me that you kind of need to get into a bit of a Zen mindset with this stuff. There are the things that we control, that we can work on, and then there are the things that are essentially out of our hands that we cannot control. Doesn't mean we don't pay attention to them. It just means, there's only so much that I can do, and so I need to focus my energy on those things that I can change. But I'm curious, you kind of, made an allusion to kind of, supply chain issues. Is the supply chain more challenging for goods that would traditionally come from mainland UK, or is it more from coming from the Republic? Where is the sand in the gears at the moment? Mostly
mainland UK. Personally that I've experienced. I know myself, I've been trying to purchase new furniture, and I've had my eye on a piece for months, and every time I go in, they go, we do not deliver to Northern Ireland. Currently we do not deliver to Northern Ireland. And even lead times with if you're doing online shopping, even the delivery of goods, where before you may have benefited from a 24-hour delivery service or 48 hours, you're seeing that kind of move into 5 and 10 days before you're getting your online delivery to the door. So I haven't really noticed Republic of Ireland if there has been much of a change.
We're seeing it in the United States from a different direction, which would be China. I don't know if you've seen any of the shots of the video of all the container ships sort of stacked up outside of the port of, I believe it's Long Beach in Los Angeles. It's just sitting out there, and we're feeling it in a very different way. And Martin, and you were talking about something about the you're living under Brexit, and your attitude is more like, let the politicians worry about that. We have to deal with what we can deal with. It strikes me that maybe in Northern Ireland you're quite adept at being able to handle that kind of ambiguity. You've been living in a situation where it just seems like, if I'm using the right word, ambiguity. People have different visions of our same city. We're not going to really resolve it, but we have to operate together under it.
Yeah, you really do just have to find ways to work and ways to collaborate. That not everyone's going to win, but everyone has to find a balance that they're going to be comfortable with. And I think in Northern Ireland we're used to doing that, in the sense that everything is around negotiation. So our negotiation skills are pretty good here. That's one thing that we've learned.
You mentioned something early on about the shared space, and in the panel that I led at New York New Belfast, that was my theme of how the arts take us back to the shared space. And it is an idea I hear a lot coming out of Northern Ireland, that sort of search for the shared space.
Yeah, and even, the site that we're talking about, kind of just going back to the Eden Project Boyle site, that is a site that was really contested in history, in the sense it was the site of the siege, and it is in the city side now. So the whole ethos around the transformational change is using this contested site to develop a new shared future for the community. So bringing everyone together, all around intergenerational play and getting back to nature. Derry suffers terribly with mental health and suicide rates. And, the River Foyle, it is one of the most stunning rivers in Europe. Although for local people, it has very negative connotations in that, there's a lot of death by suicide on the river. So it's all about using this project and using our river to reconnect with the citizens. So using nature really as a way to catalyst, new beginnings and the development of community and people. So I think that's really important, and doing that in a collaborative way is something, in partnership working is so important for that.
Yeah, I think that's a really hopeful project. And, anything that we can do to amplify it, we are delighted to do so. Can you tell me, we've talked about, the stuff that you've done over the last 2 decades in Northern Ireland, but what's coming up in your world that we should be paying attention to?
In my world, personal world, or my world, work world?
Whatever you feel comfortable in disclosing.
I suppose kind of watch this space for Awaken Hub. I mean, I'm really, really excited about the plans that we have for that and the coming months ahead. On a personal note, in the new year, I'm going to be a granny, which I'm really excited about.
Fantastic.
My daughter's having a baby, which is nice. So it'll be all change, and definitely the Eden Project Foyle, I think, it'll be so transformational for the Northwest, and I really, really want to see that happen. So for me, I'm just I'm on a cruiser down the Foyle, just kind of seeing how things go. I'm never one to plan too much. I just kind of go with the flow and see what happens. It always has worked well in the past, so I'm not going to change it now.
Great news about the grandmother business. It's probably your most exciting venture of all of late. That's great news. Claire, before we go, let's give you a chance to underscore something that's important to you that you'd like everybody to know about in this segment we call the Seamus Plug.
Oh my God! Can I just? Is it only one plug, or
go on, whatever you need.
I feel like I've already done the shameless plug. I mean, for me, the mental health aspect in the city is something that really kind of needs a spotlight shone upon, but more on a positive note, around how we can change that, and that's from personal experience. From my daughter having suffered from mental health and still suffering from mental health. So yes, there's great work that happens in the city around that. Foyle Search and Rescue are amazing. I reiterate, and the reason why I'm so passionate about Eden Project Foyle is that for me, it will be one of those changing projects that will have a significant impact on the health and well-being of the citizens of Derry. And of course, I can't not shamelessly plug Awaken Hub for especially the Irish diaspora females out there. Come along, sign up to our community, come along to our event. We are a lovely bunch, very welcoming, and we'd be delighted to see everyone.
Excellent. That's awakenhub.com for more information, and we'll spread the good word about the Eden Project as well. And Claire, really, really great to talk to you. Felt like I knew you already, but great to get to know you better here.
Thank you guys for your time.
Thank you, Claire.
Well, Martin, great to finally head north in Ireland and have a conversation with a real live Derry girl.
Yeah, John, it was long overdue. And one of the most important elements of that conversation was to understand how Claire is helping the community in which she lives, in Northern Ireland, to start digging out from the legacy of the Troubles. And the peace that's been established in Northern Ireland since 1998 and the Good Friday Accords is fragile. And getting people involved in businesses, especially businesses that can span the community, and getting people focused on building better economic lives for themselves by setting up new businesses. It's really one of the ways forward. for folks in Northern Ireland.
Martin, I was impressed. It sounded like we were talking to three people at once, all the things that Clare is involved with and leading. And thinking about it, they all seem to be in the zone of helping people do better, accomplish more, think better. For her consulting company, helping businesses succeed. For Awaken Hub, helping women excel as entrepreneurs. For the Eden Project, helping build bridges in the community and helping reopen that shared space.
Yeah, this is a multifaceted, extraordinarily busy woman. And as a uncle that has 9 nieces, Clare is certainly somebody any one of those nieces could look up to, and anybody, whether they're male or female.
And Martin, I am a sucker for the Northern accent, so that was great to add it to the show. And we're going to wrap things up with a little pitch to our listeners. If you want to help us out, spread the good word about Irish Stew, let's this week ask you to share with a friend. If you have a friend who might enjoy what we're doing here on The Stew, share it with a friend. And if you don't, share it with an enemy.
Irish Stew is produced by John Lee, Martin Nutty, and Bill Schultz. Editing, mixing, and mastering by Bill Schultz. Music on Irish Stew was composed and performed by Rosa Nutty, with Donald Bowens on drums, Cathal O'Riordan on bass and synthesizer. For more on Rosa Nutty's music, please visit rosanutty.com.